We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hopefully, your day is going well. It is Wednesday. We had the live TikTok podcast yesterday. I like doing those, to be perfectly honest with you, because it's a lot like when I have emails and when I have guests on, because I get input from the outside. And when I do the TikTok lives, it's more fast and furious, if you will, because I've constantly got questions coming in. I never run short of people asking questions or making comments. And that kind of changes the pace of the podcast. It's a little faster pace, and I kind of like that. Makes time go by very quickly. I'll tell you that. I'm going to be doing some more of those. Hopefully, you like them or at least can tolerate them. Please let me know by email your thoughts. You can send me emails, of course, at rationalboomer@gmail.com. You know what I may do this next time I do this is I may do a live on YouTube instead of TikTok. Now, it won't be so fast and furious on YouTube, but you know what I could possibly do, and I know I've talked to Old Soul about this, is doing the live on YouTube and also having a guest on, because you can do that on YouTube. You can do it on TikTok too, but I don't particularly like doing that because if I'm recording a podcast too, you wouldn't be able to hear the guest, and that would be confusing and it wouldn't make the podcast usable in audio format. Anyway, I might try that on YouTube and see how that works. We're getting more and more followers on YouTube. We won't be quite as busy, but I think we can probably put on a pretty good show with a YouTube live too. Anyway, today you just got me, boring old me by myself, but we do have some emails. So that's the important thing. Before I get to the emails, I want to mention something, this quick news story. It came out later in the evening. Apparently, Donald Trump was on Newsmax on the phone. He was being interviewed by Corey Lewandowski. I don't know if you remember him. He used to work for Donald Trump. He has a problem with hitting women. Remember back at the convention in 2020, they had video of him getting a little rough with a woman. He's kind of a loser. He's kind of a Trump humper, and clearly he's not in politics anymore. So he does what all shitty Republicans do. They get a job on a right wing news outlet, and he's working for Newsmax. Anyway, he was talking to Donald Trump on the phone, which was interesting. And Corey Lewandowski was talking to him about the idea that he wanted, that Donald Trump wanted Joe Biden to take a drug test. And he ended his question and was waiting for a response from Donald Trump, and nothing. Went for 10 seconds, 20 seconds, even 30 seconds, and nothing. So Corey comes back in trying to prod him a little more. And then finally, Donald Trump comes back on like he's coming out of a fog and babbles on at that point. Some people are suggesting that Donald Trump is glitching. That's that's possible. I mean, he's got some problems. I think we're going to see a lot of things that Republicans aren't expecting come the debate on Thursday, tomorrow, if he shows up. I'm still not absolutely sure that he's going to show up, but if he does, it's not going to go well for Donald Trump. I'm sure everybody around him is trying to get him to not show up because they know it's going to be bad. Unfortunately, we have somebody like Donald Trump who's so delusional that thinks he can go there and pull it out and look like a genius. He believes that. So I say let him go. I'd like to see him perform in a debate format in a state that he hasn't been in ever before. He's been accountable. He seems confused. He seems panicking. And that was all a great recipe for Donald Trump to be an absolute disaster when he's in this particular debate. We'll see what happens. Some people keep saying to me, well, they're going to tell him to calm down and he'll come off as normal. Yeah, I don't know about that. I mean, even if he does stay calm and comes off relatively normal, he still has to answer to 34 felony convictions. He still has to answer for taking credit for overturning Roe v. Wade. He still has to answer to being found liable of rape, all those things. And I'll be honest with you, as much as he has plans to maybe stay calm and dignified, if you will, all Joe Biden has to do is prod him once with something that hits him not quite the right way, and Donald Trump will get unhinged. He can't control his emotions. He's very reactionary. And if Joe Biden hits him just right, he's going to lose it. And from that point on, it will be a shit show for Donald Trump. But it'll be very fucking entertaining for all of us. All right, let's get to some emails. Hi, Mike. Just a quick note. I agree with you on us older folks. I'm 71 and still vote. Not sure what that. I'm not sure what she's suggesting it's her duty. After all our forefathers died so we could enjoy that right, I will therefore vote till I die, and we must not take this lightly, but be informed. You go a long way of doing that for me. Thanks, Suzanne. Well, thank you, Suzanne. I appreciate that. You know, there was a time when I'd think, oh, she's 71. She's an older gal. Well, I'm 64 now. You ain't that much older. So I appreciate you listening, and I appreciate your dedication to continuing to vote. All right, the next one says, hi, Boomer. You started today's show giving younger voters who are on an anti-Biden train due to Gaza a pretty good once-over. And I get it. Their inability to properly analyze a very simple binary proposition is frustrating. But I understand their youthful passion. And I would also hasten to add that if you transported the average boomer to today's economic and job environment, I believe 50% of us would go into the fetal position. Oh, no doubt. No doubt. And at the same time, if you took my kids in their 30s and brought them back to the 70s, they would lose their shit. I mean, everything changes. Everything changes depending on society and culture and all those things. And we slowly but surely change with the culture. But if we were dropped into it, there would be absolute culture shock. I remember one time I did a fairly lengthy interview with my grandfather, who was 92 years old at the time. He was born in 1911. And when I was talking to him, it came to mind that he died in the early 2000s. I believe it was 2004, something like that. But it was interesting because if you looked at my grandfather's life, he went through a lot of things. In 1911, radio was kind of a new thing. Not everybody had a radio. And then he lived all the way up to the internet. Now, if you'd gone back to 1911 and said, Vern, which is what his name, let me tell you about this internet thing, he would have thought you're crazy. Absolutely would have thought you're crazy. So if you grow up during time periods and you learn this stuff slowly but surely, you'll get it. But if you were dropped in willy-nilly to a era that you weren't familiar with, even though you might have read about it or something, it's going to take you by surprise. There's a lot of things that you would expect and not even appreciate necessarily until you don't have them. The emailer goes on and said, you and Soul, this has got to be Garage Door Jeff because he calls her Soul. You and Soul and other data points have convinced me, however, that women's rights will drive 2 to 3 times the votes needed to more than counter the Gaza-driven cohort. I don't disagree with you. I also think that Taylor Swift alone can drive mind-blowing numbers, and I think that she'll come out not being explicit in an endorsement, but making her position clear enough. A wink, wink. But in my circle, I run into what I'd say are super liberals, and allow me to be stereotype them as old hippies. And I bet a lot of our peers know them too. A bunch of them think it's extra intellectual, kind of like Donald Sutherland as the professor in Animal House, to say shit like, well, I'm smart enough to see that both candidates are tools of the military industrial complex. So I'm a vote for Cornel West. Yeah. What do you know about Cornel West? I'm not saying anything bad about Cornel West. I don't know much about him. but he doesn't have a prayer to win. So if you want to waste your vote, well, you go ahead and do that. Make a protest vote. That's never done anybody any good. As I've told you before, Biden may be not where you want to get to, but that's the only route to get to there ultimately. Email finishes up by saying, I'm more worried about those motherfuckers. And boom, you best believe that when I hear some old hippies say that, he has no idea how close he came to having the taste and the joint slapped out of his mouth. Probably only the joint saved his furry ass. Best Garage Door Jeff. P.S. The talk of the debate and of a performance enhancing wonder drug reminds me of the beautiful and heartbreaking 1968 film Charlie, starring Cliff Robertson. Younger folks should reach back and watch that one. Yeah, I remember that one. I think we read the book in school and we saw the movie. Yeah, that's a good movie. I've been thinking about that as of late. I don't watch a lot of movies. My wife and I will go out to a movie now and again, and we'll watch them in streaming situations too. But I'm thinking to myself, I should go back and watch some of these old movies, especially old movies I've never really watched. Like, I don't think I've ever watched the whole movie of Citizen Kane. And some people say that's the greatest movie ever. I'm 64 years old. I should watch that fucking movie. And there's a lot of old movies that I remember that I did see. And it might be kind of fun to watch them again. I'm getting old. I'm getting nostalgic. Next up, I'm going to get weepy and cry a lot, I bet. That's a funny thing. I know people my age, guys my age, and they are very emotional and they do get a little weepy at times. Now, I'm not faulting them for that. Some people might say, you don't have any emotions. Well, I do have a lot of emotions. I just kind of control them, they don't control me. Um, anyway, got off topic there. Thank you, Jeff. All right. The next one says, Hey, Mike, I'm a daily listener to your show and it's been fantastic. Love all your guests, especially Old Soul. When you get your merchandise sales up, I'm set up. I'm down for a shirt with your mug on it. I know that so much is at stake in this next election. Currently, the cost of housing, healthcare, college, and groceries are unsustainable. If the Democrats get control of all three branches, they need to rectify the broken Supreme Court, make affordable housing and college, and codify abortion and birth control, and finally raise the federal minimum wage. Keep up the good work getting spin free information out to the masses. Lee in Louisville, Kentucky. P.S. I haven't heard the Republicans talk about the caravan of immigrants headed our way lately. I figured they'd be here by now. I guess they got a flat tire or something. He brought up the high cost of food, and I never really paid attention to it too much, but yesterday I did. Both my wife and I had a pretty big lunch, and when it got to be dinner, we weren't really that hungry. Um, so she said, why don't you just go to Subway? We don't usually go to Subway, but it's close, and she likes the tuna thing. So I go to Subway. My son's here, I'm here, and my wife. So I go into Subway. I get two 12-inch Subways and one 6-inch for my wife. How much do you think that cost? It was fucking $40. I remember going into Subway and I could have only paid $20 at one time for all three of those sandwiches. $40. Now, I'm not bitching about how much it costs. Things cost what they cost, but for $40, I could go into a sit down place with my wife and I, have a better meal, and have a better experience. Some of these fast food places are getting pretty expensive, and their food isn't good enough to warrant spending that kind of money, especially when there's options for better restaurants for the same kind of money. All right. The next one comes from Philly Paul. Okay, Mike, the stage is set. Today, Fox News reported that even though the odds are obviously stacked against Dirty Diaper Donnie, due to biased moderators, the orange turd is going to show up. After this last report, I can't see any way for our favorite pathological narcissist to back out. This is great news for us. Even his imbecilic sheep are going to have to recognize that he's got more than a few screws loose. I can't wait for the shit show to begin. The only thing I have to decide before that is cold beer or Jack Daniels. What the heck? For this occasion, maybe it'll be both. There you go, Paul. That's what I expect out of a Philly fan. Enjoy the show, my friend. Philly Paul. P.S. Yes, this postscript is in honor of Garage Door Jeff. I'm not quite old enough for Sally Star, but I've seen plenty of Popeye cartoons. I'm a very early Gen Xer, just a few years behind you guys. Well, thank you, Philly Paul. Yeah, as we get closer, we're a day away right now as you're listening to this podcast. It's going to be much harder for him to back out. Um, I think he feels like he's caught. If he backs out, he's a pussy ass bitch. If he goes, he's going to get destroyed. The only thing that might be saving him at this point is while everybody around him knows he's going to get destroyed, um, I think he's delusional enough and he still thinks that he's brilliant and he can pull this out. Oh, trust me, I'm brilliant at this. Let me do it. And of course, when Donald Trump says I'm doing it, nobody apparently around Donald Trump can stop him from doing anything, even if it's self destructive. All right. Thank you, Philly Paul. Um, Next one comes from Suzanne again. She says, it seems that Trump is now backpedaling and saying Biden is a worthy opponent to debate. Thoughts on this? Yeah, he is. He's starting to be less critical of Joe Biden. And the reason he's doing this is because of all the talk and all the bullshit he was doing. He kind of fucked himself in that situation. By continuing to say that Joe Biden was nothing more than a walking corpse, he couldn't complete a sentence, he's sleeping, he's doing whatever, he set the expectations for Joe very low. So Joe just has to go in there, do his job, talk his facts, and he'll look brilliant compared to the way Donald Trump depicted him. So now he's trying to even the playing field. Had he been thinking ahead of time, he wouldn't have had to do fucking anything. Just saying. All right, next one. The hits keep on coming for Trumple Thin Skin's fragile ego. I saw this tidbit on Scripps News today. For the first time since it has been keeping track of such information, 2024 is the only time that not a single Fortune 100 CEO has donated any money to the Republicans' presidential campaign. Panzer's emails are great. Keep them coming, Panzer. I never miss a Not a Podcast, Rational Boomer podcast. Thanks, Peg HM. Thank you, Peg. I appreciate that. I'm sure Panzer appreciates it. Um, yeah, the Not a Podcast. I didn't know what the fuck to call it. It's not a podcast, so I couldn't call it a podcast. It's not the Rational Boomer podcast. So I got lazy and just called it Not a Podcast. Um, and I'm glad you like that. I'd often been thinking about having a second shorter podcast, and this is a perfect opportunity because I don't have to redo it. I just have to utilize the TikToks that run um, during the day. The only problem I'm having with it is when I do TikToks, it's when I have the information. So I don't sit down and do six of them at 9 in the morning because things change. So I do a couple and then I do a couple more. And depending on what's going on, it it can be later or earlier where I post that, not a podcast thing. So it's hard to get a lot of consistency as to when that's going to come out, unlike the Rational Boomer podcast. But I'll keep it up. I'll keep doing it. It's not a problem. I thought it might be a pain in the ass. It's not really. It's pretty simple. All right. Next one comes from Gabrielle. Hi, Mike. Just curious if you announced that you're going to do a live TikTok podcast prior to doing them. Just came across this TikTok and it kind of answered a question I posed in a previous email to you. What the F does Trump have hanging over the Republicans? Take care, Gabrielle. I do not announce them typically before I do them. I should. I should give a heads up to the moderators. I've just been very lucky that I just, pull this shit out of my ass and say, I'm going to do a live right now. And I do it. and I throw caution to the wind. Unfortunately, that's kind of how I live my life. I shoot from the hip and I do what I do whenever I do it. Um, I should probably give a heads up to folks, but I don't. As it is, by just doing what I'm doing, putting up these little pop up shop TikTok lives, um, the people come in pretty fast and furious. One of the reasons I don't promote it is because I don't want Trumplafucks to have some time to prepare and strategize to come take down the live. I don't know if that does any good or not because we do get plenty of Trumplafucks in the lives, but mainly Gabrielle, the reason I don't give an announcement or lead time to me doing a TikTok live because I'm a lazy bastard. I could do all those things. I could do a TikTok that says, "Hey, I'm on live, check me out," but I'm too fucking lazy to do that. I just do what I do when I do it. I'll try to be better about that and give some kind of maybe what I could do is just do a TikTok that goes out only to the followers and say I'm doing a live. It just seems presumptuous. Oh, Mike's doing a live. Let's drop everything and watch. People have things to do, and if you can come, great. If you can't, that's no problem. I'll do another one. I don't really know why I don't do it. It's just how I kind of live my life. I do what I do when I do it, and I'm lazy and probably a bit rude by doing it that way. All right. Next one says, Mike, I love your podcasts. Keep them coming. I don't know what to expect for the debates. I already know who I'm voting for, but it's like watching a car wreck that makes me want to watch this circus unfold. I am of similar generation as yourself and consider myself average, well educated. Then why am I pulled into this train wreck? Midwest Chicago PD, no lips. PS. Does anyone care about Iran? PNL out. Pete. I don't know what that last couple of sentences meant, but um, yeah, I know what you mean. Why do you care? Well, there's two reasons why you care about this. First of all, it is a train wreck, and nobody can bypass a train wreck without looking at it. Back when I was doing traffic reporting, there was a psychological or sociology, I don't know what it was called, but anytime you would have an accident or some kind of incident on the shoulder, not blocking anything, the lanes are still able to flow like they normally flow. But if there is somebody on the shoulder, um, everything slows down. You get a huge backup because everybody slows down and then the people behind them slow down and so forth. And then if you put a attractive young lady on the shoulder, that magnifies the whole fucking thing. It sounds crazy, but trust me, I spent 27 years watching this shit, and that's exactly what happens. All right, thanks, Pete. All right, the next one says, Hi, Rational Boomer. Short and sweet. What do you think the breakdown will be on the idiotic immunity claim on the Supreme Court? 907254, or God forbid, the now biased court makes a crazy ruling. There are federal district courts, so there could be 13 justices on the court. I think Old Soul is excellent and truly committed to good deeds, and I find her insight interesting. I would love to give you a young boomer's view of a guy that is dealing with blood cancer and getting my PhD in history. I worked 32 years in medical sales and had to retire. So I got my BA and master's after my diagnosis and now an attempt at a doctorate. I would love if I could give my 2 cents on the podcast regarding myself, a conservative Democrat that leans left on most social programs. I have zero time or tolerance for Trump-la-fucks, and in a blue state like Rhode Island, and there are some of them, but the flags are down this time. I love to talk because we are close in age. I'm 60. I think I have gone long here, Rational Boomer. The world and the United States has seen these types of times before. False idols are gods of the stupid. Best, Chris. Well, Chris, you sound like a very motivated guy, which may be hard for me to relate to. I'm motivated to a certain extent, but not nearly as motivated as you are, especially when it comes to getting education. But if you'd like to come on the podcast, I've said it a million times, I'll say it again. You're welcome. You're a listener of the podcast. That's all you need to do is qualify. So you send me an email at rationalboomer@gmail.com and tell me when you're available. Now, typically, I record the podcast at about 9:30 my time, Central Daylight Time. That's not to say I can't be flexible. Like if I'm talking to Ed, he can only do it at 11 o'clock a.m. my time on Fridays. I don't know why. He's fucking retired. What else does he have to do? So I can be somewhat flexible. We can do that. But it's a very simple process. I had another woman asked about it, and well, actually, there's a woman who's on TikTok, and maybe I don't know if she listens to the podcast or not. But on TikTok, she goes by Corsos and Kittens. She's got a great following. She's a very sharp lady. I like her TikToks. It's political in nature, and I get some good information from her. And I'm hoping that we can get her on. I'm trying to work that out right now. I think she'll be a good guest, and I think we'll do a good show with her. But all you have to do is send me an email. Tell me when you're available, and we'll see if we can work it out. Chances are we will. All right. Continuing on. Um, it was primary day last night, and there were a couple of primaries that people were watching closely. Representative Jamal Brown, a Democrat from New York, he's a progressive firebrand and outspoken advocate for Palestinian rights, lost his Democratic primary uh, last night, marking the first defeat of an incumbent member of the unilateral squad and a major setback for the country's once ascendant activist left. Now, you probably remember this guy too. He's the one that the Republicans got all wired up about when they had the hearings going on, and he was in some other building and he pulled the fire alarm and said he didn't, but then there was video that showed he did. Jamal's a little goofy. I'm not saying he's a bad guy or a bad representative, but he seemed a little unstable at times. But he lost his primary, and he lost it to Westchester County Executive George Latimer, 70. He defeated Bowman, who's 48, in New York's 16th congressional district, which encompasses what does it encompass? Encompasses the lower half of suburban Westchester County and a sliver of northeastern Bronx. Latimer, a 35-year veteran of Westchester politics, is all but assured a seat in Congress come November, since the solid Democratic seat is not competitive in the general election. Now, Latimer benefited from the fundraising and super PAC support of pro-Israeli groups, including the American Israel Public Affairs Committee and the Democratic Majority for Israel. AIPAC's super PAC alone spent nearly $15 million pummeling Bowman in TV, digital, and direct mail advertising, contributing to the pro-Latimer outside group's 9-1 spending advantage over Bowman. That some of AIPAC's biggest super PAC donors are Republican billionaires and multimillionaires was a source of particular frustration for Bowman and his progressive allies. Yeah, this is kind of interesting. I'm not suggesting that this guy is necessarily leaning to the far right or to the Republicans at all. He claims to be a Democrat. He's been in local politics as a Democrat. We have to presume that he will maintain his Democratic status once he becomes a representative. And as was said in this article, that there's not a lot of competition, and certainly the Republicans don't do well in this particular district. So Jamal Brown will be out. Chances are George Latimer will be in, and it'll be interesting to see how this shakes out. Thankfully, he's a Democrat, and we won't lose a seat to a Republican. And I guess, first and foremost, that is the most important thing. So, there was another primary of note in Colorado with Lauren Boebert. You'll be interested to hear how that went, and we will get to that after we take a quick break. All right, we are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. It was primary night last night. There was a lot of primaries. I'm not going to talk about them all because most of them, not everybody knows who they are. But there was one other primary that was a big deal, and that was in Colorado and was involving Lauren Boebert. Now, we know who Lauren Boebert is. She's an absolute idiot, and she needs to get her ass kicked out of Congress, to be perfectly honest with you. But so far, she seems to be in pretty good shape. And it was weird. She was in one district. She won a very close race in 2022. She started feeling like her chances weren't very good. And then Ken Buck in a different district decided to retire, and his district is far more Republican. So she thought she'd carpetbag her way over to that district and hopefully find better prospects. Well, she was in a primary last night. And to be perfectly honest with you, in spite of how stupid she is, she won, and she won big. She won like 30 points. Representative Lauren Boebert won the Republican primary election in Colorado's 4th congressional district on Tuesday. Boebert beat 5 other Republicans and will face the winner of Tuesday's Democratic primary in the general election for the seat vacated by former Rep. Ken Buck, who retired earlier this year. Now, Boebert bailed on her own district, as I said, Colorado's 3rd district, after barely surviving the challenge from Democrat Adam Frisch in 2022. Buck's district leans more Republican and may give Boebert a better shot of prevailing in November. Now, she wins in the 4th district, but Frisch, who's running again, wins in the 3rd district. Then that's one for Democrats, because coming out of 2022, we had Boebert in the 3rd district, Ken Buck in the 4th district, both Republicans. If we can make the split here, even if Lauren Boebert wins in the 4th district and Frisch wins in the 3rd district, then we're up one. So you got to like that. Now, Lauren Boebert has a lot of baggage to deal with, and it's really only gotten heavier since she first brought her gun-toting brand to Congress in 2021. Now, last fall, she was ejected from a Denver performance of the touring Broadway musical Beetlejuice. You remember that? She was singing, she was vaping, she was doing the Donald Trump to her boyfriend, meaning grabbing privates. Yeah, she's a real class act. She denied all of this, of course, but then of course a video came out that showed she was doing this shit. Nevertheless, Boebert has sought to contrast herself with Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, another House Republican who draws attention for her bullshit and caustic statements after Greene derailed a hearing by insulting a Democratic colleague last month. Boebert joined Democrats in voting to reprimand Greene and also apologized to the American people on her colleague's behalf. I'm sure that Lauren Boebert's got a bit of an axe to grind, because you remember, not only did Marjorie Taylor Greene insult this Democratic rep, at one point we hear tell that Marjorie Taylor Greene referred to Lauren Boebert on the House floor as a little bitch. Now, as much as that is accurate, that's a little outside of decorum in the House of Representatives. Yeah, they're a classy bunch on the Republican side. Now, Buck announced his retirement following disagreements with his party on election denialism, impeaching President Joe Biden, and of course, other issues. The Republican Party, especially in the House of Representatives, has purged itself of dissenting voices. So Margie will probably be back. Lauren Boebert will probably be back. And some people may be upset about that. I'm not really. As much as they are loud and obnoxious, they do nothing. They accomplish nothing. And I would have rather have two representatives on the Republican side doing nothing as opposed to bringing in new politicians that might be more formidable, that may be brighter. So I don't mind having her there. And frankly, when the Democrats are in control, they are going to beat the shit out of her and maybe end up booting her from Congress. But we'll see how this all shakes out. Now, ABC News is reporting that former Trump lawyer Evan Corcoran, his private notes about his interactions with former president contain even more incriminating information than has been previously revealed. And we've talked about this before. As time goes on, we are going to hear more and more shit. I mean, we've heard a lot of shit up to this point, but it's going to keep coming out, and we are going to be surprised every time. Now, specifically, Corcoran said in recorded notes that Trump's privately expressed concerns that turning over potentially classified documents in his possession after a May 2022 subpoena could result in criminal charges, although it appears that his subsequent decision to allegedly evade the subpoena is what actually got him hit with criminal charges. The fact that Trump knew he faced criminal prosecution for possessing the top secret government documents could be used by prosecutors to establish his consciousness of guilt and would paint his efforts allegedly confound government efforts to retrieve the documents in an even more incriminating light. They always talk about what was his intent? Did he really realize that this was a bad thing? Well, clearly he did. And that is a problem for Donald Trump. Now, in his notes, Corcoran said that Trump raised a question as to if we gave them additional documents now, the Department of Justice, come back and say, well, why did you withhold them and try to use that as a basis for criminal liability or to make him look bad in the press? Trump would then say that it might be better to simply tell the government there were no documents, which itself would be a crime given that there were boxes full of classified documents still stashed in the Mar-a-Lago resort. Now, ABC writes, this is exactly one of the crimes the prosecutors have charged Trump with committing, as they said in a recent filing that he tried to enlist his attorney in his criminal endeavor, tested his attorney's receptiveness, and then manipulated his attorney to achieve his criminal ends when the attorney did not accept his overtures. Now, that's one of the things they're arguing down in Florida with Aileen Cannon, the judge there. There were two hearings yesterday, both of them pointless. Both of them have already been adjudicated by other judges, but this is what Aileen Cannon does. It's all about delaying and all about confusing and creating chaos and never coming up with a date for the trial to start. You'll remember I think the prosecution was talking about a July start date for the trial. She admonished him for that, and then even the defense team said, "Well, we can go August 12th," and the prosecution said, "Yeah, we're cool with that. How about August 12th?" And Aileen Cannon was the one that said, "Yeah, I don't know. Let's not make a date yet. Let's not go too fast here." Um, but all of these things are going on right now, and we're getting closer and closer to that time where Jack Smith can actually appeal to the 11th Circuit. That's what we're waiting for here. She has to make a decision on something or do something that doesn't have to do with scheduling. And once she does that, then they can appeal it to the 11th Circuit. And then at that point, of course, they can throw everything else on board. So let's talk more about Aileen Cannon. She has set up the Mar-a-Lago classified documents case in such a way that not only is its future dependent on whether former President Donald Trump wins in November, but her own could be too. This is written by Harry Littman for the Los Angeles Times. This comes shortly after Cannon, a Trump appointee who was generated constant controversy for slow walking and tilting various aspects of the charges against Trump to apparently benefit him, held a hearing this week on whether to declare special counsel Jack Smith's appointment unlawful. Again, this was already adjudicated. It's a bunch of bullshit. It's just a time waster. She continues dragging out and threatening to deny the process of imposing a gag order on Trump, which Littman has already argued could give Smith what he needs to appeal her conduct to a higher court. It also comes after new reporting that Cannon was privately asked by multiple senior judicial colleagues to bow out of the case and let someone more experienced handle it, which she obviously refused. Now, Cannon's mischief making in the civil cases included her appointment of a special master to sift through seized documents. We all know how that ended up. It did not go well. That shackled the Justice Department in an unprecedented fashion and drew criticism from legal experts of all ideological stripes. It took two decisions excoriating Cannon by the conservative 11th Circuit U.S. Court of Appeals to shut down her misadventure. Those two strikes against the judge arguably put her oversight of the case at real risk if she draws another rebuke from the appellate court. Now, ultimately, her delays have ensured that the trial can only take place after the election, and Trump is widely expected to order the Justice Department to drop the case against himself if he wins. That's a Hail Mary pass. As I've told you, he can't win. Keep getting people telling me, well, he might. Well, please tell me how. And nobody can tell me how other than they have a feeling. Well, that's your emotions. Fucking shove them back down and control them. Don't let those emotions take you over, because all of the facts, Roe v. Wade and all this shit, tells me he can't win. Now, Trump loss, on the other hand, would do more than just keep the case going, Littman concluded, but also mean Cannon must continue in a role that is drawing her increased scrutiny and criticism from even members of her own judicial district. Cannon's behavior was a forewarning of her bizarre and almost ludicrously pro-Trump handling of the case, wrote Littman. The latest reporting on Cannon confirms that she's willing to invite the deep disrespect of the community that normally determines a judge's professional standing. Now, if Trump wins in November, she has every reason to expect the gamble to pay large rewards. If he loses, she has every reason to expect to go down with the ship. It's a risk she appears to be determined to run. And again, it's a fucking long shot. It's a sucker's bet. And apparently she's willing to take that bet, which seems foolish to me. All right. Now, Mike Johnson is flapping his lips now, too. And it's all regarding Donald Trump's drug testing requests by Donald Trump. However, Mike Johnson has a more reasonable take on this, a sensible take. Speaker Mike Johnson insisted that President Joe Biden will not be on cocaine during Thursday's debate, despite what Donald Trump says. What else is he's got to say that? I mean, it's so ridiculous. It's so silly. Even he's not willing to kiss Donald Trump's ass that far. The former president and his allies have insisted that Biden will take performance enhancing before the two debate. Trump has even suggested the president will do cocaine. Motherfucker's 82 years old. How many people who do cocaine their whole life, which he would have had to do, live to 82? Please, motherfucker. Now, during a rally this month, Trump alluded to a baggie of cocaine that was found at the White House last year. An internal investigation failed to identify the owner. But what about that little pharmacy that your buddy Ronnie Jackson had going in the White House, where a lot of illicit drugs were fed out? Yeah, I think that's more likely to be tied to Donald Trump than this cocaine that was found in a closet. There's tons of people that go there. The president doesn't ever go there The idea is just ridiculous. This is a perfect example how they take something insignificant and exaggerate it and explode it and try to make something out of it just to try to make Joe Biden look bad. Unfortunately for them, fortunately for the Democrats, they've never been successful. They've always failed and they've always embarrassed themselves. And he goes on to say Joe Biden doesn't have a clue, Trump told the rally goers. Now we're going to watch. Is anybody going to watch the debate? He's going to be so pumped up. He's going to be pumped up. You know, all that stuff that was missing about a month ago from the White House. What happened? Yeah, what happened, Donnie? What happened when you chose not to? You refused to take a drug test when the probation officer insisted that you do. Now, as we understand it, he is going to have to take this drug test at some point before sentencing. We'll see how that plays out. And if he refuses again, we'll see what the punishment is. You know, for all intents and purposes, if he doesn't take the drug test as a convict, he should sit in jail for a time. He should pay the consequences for um, not doing what the court told him to do. Now, during Tuesday's installment of The Source on CNN, Caitlin Collins asked the speaker about Trump's comments. She said, just knowing you and how you conduct yourself, do you think some of the rhetoric is out of line when people from Trump's team are suggesting that Trump himself, that Biden is going to be on cocaine when he's on the debate stage Thursday night? She asked. Johnson insisted Trump was joking. Don't you just love that? Every time Donald Trump says something stupid, they will say, oh, he's just joking, or what he really meant was. How about if Donald Trump just says what he means, is clear about it? Communications is kind of an important skill to have when you're president of the United States, and apparently Donald Trump has yet to master that. He goes on to say, look, there's a lot of things that are said in jest, he replied. Of course, no one expects that Joe Biden will be on cocaine. Really? Well, then why does Donald Trump keep saying it? I mean, a joke's one thing. You say it once and it's an aside, and then you get some new material. Not Donald Trump. He keeps ranting about it. He will rant about it today. He will rant about it tomorrow leading up to the debate, and he will rant about it afterwards after he gets his ass kicked. Not a joke. And Michael Johnson is insulting all of us to try to make us believe that. Now, Johnson referenced Biden's State of the Union address in March, where the president exceeded the low expectations that conservative commentators had set for him. Biden's performance was so energetic that Sean Hannity of Fox News called him Jacked Up Joe. So we know where Donald Trump got the story or the idea from Sean Hannity. But we are finding out that when Donald Trump was in office, Sean Hannity had a lot of influence over the president of the United States. Is that a good idea? A third-rate reporter from a non-news entity influencing and advising our president? Wow. That's a special kind of fucked up. Johnson continued, he had a lot of energy that night, so that's the Joe Biden I expect to see. The question is, can he stay for 90 minutes on the stage and go toe to toe with President Trump, who, as you know, goes to rallies and talks 2 hours on end without any break and any notes? Well, yeah, this is a much different situation, and I'm sure Joe can stand toe to toe. I mean, the State of the Union was about 90 minutes, if I remember correctly. Yeah, I think Joe will do just fine. I think Joe, unlike Donald Trump, will not lose his shit and start talking about crazy shit. And all Joe has to do is lay back, pace himself, stick him a couple times with some needling about the felony convictions, about the rape charges, about all this stuff. All he has to do is do that a little bit, get under his skin, and then state the facts. Because Joe Biden's got a lot of facts he can use. Donald Trump has none. Now, at least one House Republican has demanded Biden take drug tests before and after the debate. You know what? Let's have everybody in Congress, everybody in government take a drug test tomorrow. Let's see how that works out. I bet you Matt Gaetz wouldn't take the test. Now, Ronnie Jackson, the former White House physician and now a representative and a fucking goofball at that, he said, it's embarrassing that I have to do this. And it's really embarrassing as a former White House physician to have to do something like this. But we don't have any choice based on what's going on, said Representative Ronnie Jackson, a former White House physician. Wait a minute. Mike Johnson just said that was a joke. Does Ronnie Jackson not get the joke? Or should I call him Ronnie Johnson? Because that apparently is what Donald Trump thinks his name is. Wow. Joe Biden's not going to take a drug test. And I talked about this in a TikTok. I said, Donald Trump is always trying to grasp for some power by acquiescing to Donald Trump's stories. Joe would in turn be giving Donald Trump some power that he doesn't need to give him. Donald Trump has no power. He's a guy, he's a private citizen. Joe Biden is the president. A guy who's a private citizen, who's a convict, and who's crazy doesn't have any power to demand anything from Joe Biden. Neither does Representative Ronnie Jackson. He has no authority to demand anything. And I think, it'd be great if Joe took the test and saw he was clean, and then Donald Trump would have to take it, which he'd work a way around not doing. Um, but I think it sets a bad precedence. I don't think Joe should bow to these fucks. He should go in there, kick his ass, because no matter what he does, drug test or not, they'll come up with something different to bitch about or complain about or create a conspiracy theory. So it really doesn't matter. You're not going to shut him up. Just go in, do your job, kick his ass, and then continue down the road toward November. All right, here's an interesting story. The White House on Tuesday accused House Judiciary Committee Republicans of working to harass and intimidate a private citizen after they scheduled a meeting to consider a contempt referral for President Biden's ghostwriter. Oh, now they're going to get a contempt referral for the guy who helped Joe Biden write a book. Yeah, how's that working for you? You tried to find Merrick Garland in contempt. That was so silly to me. They have to go to the DOJ to file charges against Merrick Garland, who's in charge of the DOJ. Fucking brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. How do you think that was going to go? Well, they said, no, we're not doing it. And the main reason they're not doing it is because Joe Biden has already claimed executive privilege on that audio recording. And that's all he has to do. The only person, much to Donald Trump and all his little Trumplafucks chagrin, you have to be a sitting president to execute or issue executive privilege. Joe Biden did it. He's in a position to do it. You should shut the fuck up and obey the law and obey the Constitution. Now, the House Judiciary Committee plans to meet Thursday to mark up a resolution to hold Mark Zwanitzer in contempt of Congress after he failed to turn over audio tapes and notes from his interviews with Biden. So they went to Merrick Garland first. They didn't get anywhere. So now they're going to go to this ghost writer and try to scare him. You know what's funny? This committee against the weaponization of the DOJ seems to be weaponizing the DOJ. Isn't that ironic? Now, in a letter to the Judiciary Committee Chair, Jim Jordan of Ohio, Edward Siskel, counsel to the president, argues that Zwanitzer is not in a position to comply with the request as there are significant executive branch interests at stake. The committee's actions are an obvious example of the very weaponization of government for political purposes that you claim to decry. Putting a private citizen in your political crosshairs and threatening him with criminal prosecution simply because you refuse to engage with executive branch is out of bounds, Siskel wrote in a letter to obtained by the Hill. If you were sincerely interested in examining the handling of classified information, you would engage with the executive branch, not a private citizen with no authority related to classified information. The committee did not respond to the request for a comment, obviously. Republicans asked for Zwanitzer's materials after special counsel Robert Hur noted in his report documenting his investigation into Biden's handling of the classified records that the president appeared to have read passages from his own notebook that referenced classified information. Now, based on the information in special counsel Hur's report, President Biden's assertion that he never shared classified information with you appears to be false, Jordan wrote in February when initially requesting the information. Zwanitzer, through his attorney, has noted that he turned the materials over to the Justice Department. While he initially deleted recordings of his conversation with Biden, the department was able to recover them. Now, the department continues to have possession, custody, and control of those files, Zwanitzer's attorney wrote in May letter suggesting the panel deal directly with the DOJ. They tried that. It didn't work. So now they think Zwanitzer, this author, somehow kept a bootleg copy of the interview with Joe Biden. Apparently he hasn't. So you're going to try to compel this guy to turn over an audio recording that he does not have. That sounds like the Republicans. That sounds like the bullshit they pull. Now, Zwanitzer's attorney noted that personal nature of most of the interviews and materials needed to prep Biden's memoir, adding they would not serve any legitimate legislative purposes. So they're going to argue about this a little bit, and they're going to get nowhere as they do. These fucks continue to try to create chaos and bullshit, and it never works. That's got to be the frustrating thing for them, that nothing ever works for them. They keep trying and they keep failing. The ironic thing is that they keep trying. You would think after a period of time when you don't exactly accomplish what you hope to accomplish, you'd stop doing it. You'd find another route. Um, it's crazy. It's absolutely ridiculous. Now, as we're going to wrap things up here shortly, we'll just talk briefly about the debate again. That is the hot topic, and that's happening tomorrow. The Republicans are a little concerned, as you might guess, and there are some Republicans hoping Trump doesn't do something specific during the debate. I'm thinking there's a lot of things Donald Trump is at risk of doing that's going to be damaging to him. Now, Donald Trump's Republican allies on Capitol Hill want him to play nice in his first 2024 debate with President Biden on Thursday. What they're basically saying is stay calm, don't go unhinged, don't get crazy. And that's all well and good, but that doesn't change the message he has to give. He did embrace and take credit for overturning Roe v. Wade. That alone is enough to sink him. He was also convicted of 34 felony charges. He was found liable of rape. There's any number of things that Joe can bring up. And as much as they want him to stay calm, cool, and collected, Donald Trump doesn't have that capacity. You say the wrong thing to him at the wrong time, and he's going to fight back and he's going to lose his shit. And I cannot wait. They're urging the former president, who frequently veers off script and goes on wild tangents during campaign appearance, to stick to policy and contrast his plans for another term in the White House with Biden's tenure as president and his handling of the economy. Yeah, that should be a good one if he's going to talk about the economy, because the economy is fucking awesome at this point. We do still have issues with inflation, but that's not Joe Biden. That's greed in corporate America. And if we let Joe Biden get some power in the House and the Senate, we can fix that shit too. They want him to steer clear of talk about supposedly stolen elections, something he often brings up to supporters on the campaign trail. He should focus on looking forward, said Mike Rounds. He should look at what our policy needs are. We should have a look at what it's going to do to bring down the price of groceries and how he's going to what he's going to do to bring down the price of gasoline, price of energy. He should leave the past behind. That's well and good. It's like pouring a pile of candy on the table and telling a toddler, do not touch the candy. I'm going outside the room, or putting a steak in a dish and telling the dog, don't touch that. Don't touch that. It's not possible. It's not going to fucking work. Donald Trump is going to go off the rails ultimately because he can't help it. He can't control himself. He is controlled by his emotions. And once he thinks he's being attacked, he's going to return the favor. Except when he does it, it will appear unhinged and crazy. So I don't expect Donald Trump getting through this debate without going a little nuts. And that's enough to discredit him for a lot of people. Because remember, this debate is going to be played on all the networks live. So there's going to be a lot of liberals watching, of course, but there's going to be a lot of Republicans watching too. And they aren't going to be able to have their news outlets edit and crop and do all the things they normally do. The hard truth is going to hit them in the face like a fucking freight train. It's just a matter of will they realize it and how will they respond. Nonetheless, they will be exposed to the truth for once in their lives. It'll be interesting to see what they do with it once they have it. All right. We are going to wrap things up for the Rational Boomer podcast. I want to thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen. I hope you have a great day, and we'll talk to you again tomorrow.